Hi everyone. So by now you guys should have completed your color mixing exercise from the first week. And I realized I had another optional one that is attached onto the Google Classroom. And it's similar, but maybe a little bit simpler if you'd rather do that. Either one, as long as you're getting your practice on value change and blending. So that was our first one. Not real exciting, but actually a very good thing to be doing. So now we're going to carry it a step further and actually create a finished product. But we're going to start off with some practices again, and I call this Ribbon, Snakes, and Worms in Space. So there's this document that you'll see attached onto the Google Classroom. The idea is that people tend to be a little bit fearful of overlapping, so we're going to practice overlapping in mini baby steps. So I thought an easy way to do this, to make it more random, is to get a string of some kind, a shoelace or just a string, and throw it down. You're going to be practicing this on just cheap paper, like Xerox paper or something in your sketchbook. You can easily just do it in your inexpensive sketchbook. Don't use good paper for this. So once the string falls down, just trace it. And it doesn't matter if it moves a little bit. Nobody is going to really know what the original string looked like. So there I have my first string, and then do it a couple more times, making sure that the string is overlapping, and you can kind of wiggle it around a little bit. So I'm going to trace it. It doesn't matter which side you trace it. You don't want a lot of parts of the string coinciding at the same place. Oh, here we have a little loop. That's good. So we've got that. And like on this one, it ended, so you might want to make it go a little bit more. And then one more. That looks good. Maybe move it around a little bit. I'm going to move it over so it doesn't go off the page. Okay, so now I have all these different strings. Now what I want to do is double them. And if you'd like to double them one string at a time, you can do that. I'll go back to this in a second. So for example, if you'd rather do it this way, where you put it down and you trace it, pretend I'm doing a really nice job here. You can double it right now. So this is going to be the worm page. So I'm going to turn this into a long, skinny worm. Okay. So on this one, I didn't double it first, so I'm going to have to figure out where the worm, and try and keep it somewhat even so it doesn't get thin and thick. Okay, so that's worm number one. Maybe I'll end it right there. And here's worm number two. Don't worry about where they overlap yet. We'll figure that all out later. Actually, I don't want to avoid that. Just let it go wherever it happened to go. And then the third one. So let's go on the outside. You could either go this way or this way. And I sort of made the decision to go on the outside so it didn't run into too many conjunctions there. Now here's where that loop was. What happened to that? Oops. It does get a little confusing, of course. Oh, that's where this one was. Okay. So this one went around. And there was that one. Okay. I think we got it. So now you want to go through, and wherever one worm overlaps the other, you want to figure out, you want to erase any two lines. So if I decide to erase these two, it looks like this worm, we'll call this worm number 1, and you could do them in different colors, but then they're hard to erase, is overlapping worm number 2. Okay, now if I'd erased the other two like this, then it would look like worm number 2 is on top. So it doesn't matter, you just make the decision. Now here's worm number 2, it was on top. Maybe we should make it go under the next worm. So now it's going over, under, and now maybe we'll have it go over again. So they're sort of intertwining, so almost like weaving. And now here's worm number 2, it's going over, under, over. Maybe it'll go under so that we erase this one. So here's worm number 1. It just went over, so maybe we'll have it go under. And this is worm number 3. I think I got a little confused down here, so we'll have to figure that out. Now, because this little worm head ended right there, let's actually change it a little bit. And that's what pencil's good for. So now you can see we're starting to get an interesting configuration. This worm number 2 went under and over and under and over. Now here's where I don't know what happened, but let's just do this. So this is going over, 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 and under. And then over, and under. You don't have to go over, under, but I think it's kind of fun to have it intertwining like that. Under and over. Okay, so here's this, I don't know what's going on there. I think one worm turned into another. They morphed. So this goes here. Let's go there. Okay. So you kind of see what we're doing. I'll have to take more time to figure that one out, but I think I'll just erase this extra part, and so we have it working out. Okay, and if you want to have fun with it, I had my high school and middle school kids turn them into little worm faces. So these were just sort of cartoon worms. And they might have had a little hat on. And so there's the worms. Okay, so you can practice with that. Then I had them do it again. And if you want to do a second one on a piece of paper, maybe make the next one turn into snakes. So we'll take this one that I started with and so I'll double it. Oops. It's easy to lose track of where you're going here. And now I made these be snakes. Do, maybe 3 of them. So to make them be snakes, this one under, over, and this will go under. You get a little more complicated. So they can have their mouths open and fangs, and they can have designs on them like snakes. and so on. So each one can be a little bit different. One can have dots and one can have stripes. So anyway, this is practicing with that intertwining. Now to get into ribbons, it gets a little bit more complicated because we're going to do the ribbon twists. So again, you can use the string or just go ahead and make a wiggly line. The only thing that the string helps you to do is not make it too even. It helps you to get it more random, because we have a tendency to just kind of go back and forth and make it all even. So there's one. And what we're going to do this time is every time it makes a twist or a U-turn, we're going to crisscross it. So this is now a ribbon. So we're coming around like this, and we're going to crisscross at the end of the U-turn. Crisscross. So somewhere on the end of the U-turn, we're going to make a crisscross. Okay, so now we have this little crisscross, and I called this with the kids, I said, this is the butt. It looks like a little, bottom. So I said, round off the butt, and round off the butt. Now you have an X there. What you want to do is erase one of the X's. So all this is going to be done very lightly, because you obviously are going to be doing lots of erasing on not only the overlapping, but on the twists on the ribbon. So it doesn't matter which one, but just erase one of them so you can kind of see this twist. And here, let's round off the butt and erase one part of the X. Round off the butt, erase the X, round off the butt, and erase the X. And you can kind of fix it a little bit if it doesn't look quite right. So now we get these little twists. So when we add the second ribbon, oh, I'm going to do some loops on this one. So here's the X, the X, oops. Okay, so now I've got the other thing going on. Besides rounding off the butt and making the X's, here's the butt. I've also got a situation where I've got to decide which one is in front of the other. So I'll go ahead and erase this. So this ribbon is on top of that one. And this one's going under. Or I could go ahead and erase this whole part here and have it got a little fat there, so I'm going to fix that. It's unfortunate that the X just happened to come right at the same place, but that's what happens sometimes. And I'll have this one underneath. Erase, erase. So even on the ribbon overlapping itself, you get that loop there. And so you have to decide which part of the ribbon is on top of the other. There's the round off the butt, get the X, and figure out which one is on top. Okay, so you're starting to get some interesting things happening. So on our final project, after you've practiced and you feel fairly certain that you know what you're doing, then come up with a theme. It could be using ribbons, probably ribbons, just because they're pretty, but you could also use any kind of string-like object. You could have snakes if you wanted to have a more dark situation. It doesn't have to be filling the page like this. And you can add other things, like if you wanted to put lettering on it that said, goodbye 2020, you could do that and have something, in here. or have something over winding around. So this document that's on the Google Classroom kind of goes over that. It talks about the worms and the snakes. And these are documents that I had for the kids, so it might have stuff about talking to Mrs. Clark or putting your name and period number on it, but just ignore that part. So this kind of goes over that. And here's a few examples, and these are attached to the Google Classroom, just what the high school kids did. So you can see how she had the ribbons going around one of her favorite cartoon characters. And notice how she's got some shading going on there. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now I remember this girl, Iris, she loved pandas. Every art project somehow incorporated a panda. So of course that's what she chose. You can pick something that's is important to you. This person did a Mindy tattoo hand. And they used ink and watercolor. So if you'd like to include some ink or some watercolor with your colored pencil, you can. But since this is a colored pencil class, we want the colored pencil to be dominant. It's okay if you have some mixed media. And I love the way they did the shading, and you've practiced that hard and light pressure or using the blender. So they've got some darks and lights. It makes the ribbon look a little bit shiny. Think about all the Christmas presents or ribbons for birthdays. This one gets more sort of abstract. This is a goose or a duck, and it's got little skinny ribbons all wrapped around it. And I'm not sure what the significance is there, but she titled it Creativity in Wonderland. And maybe she didn't even know where she was going at first. I remember this guy, Omar, everything was an octopus all the time. So he called this Octomar. And so instead of having ribbons, he had the octopus legs intertwining. So you can get really creative. And then this one just had a word done in Old English letter. It was art. So again, these are be a little clearer on the Google Classroom if you want to look at them there. So our project involves the 3 C's. So you want to have good craftsmanship on your coloring of the ribbons and the drawing, making the thickness even. So draw lightly at first, and you might want to use your better paper for the final product. So you would want to use this Bristol paper or an 80-pound white drawing paper if you'd rather have that. And it doesn't matter what size. I wouldn't make it too big because there's a lot of work in it. And then you want to think about a good composition, like what's your focal point, make sure it's balanced, and creativity. What are you doing that's going to make yours be different than everybody else's? I came across this on Pinterest. So this is a little bit different way to do a ribbon twist, and you can incorporate that. So on this one, you start with, actually it goes this way. You start with this kind of a wiggle. And it's kind of like ribbon candy. And then you have a line that is adjacent, or what's that word? I can't think of it right now, where it just kind of touches the end of that curve. And then another one parallel that touches the end of that curve, and so on. It could continue. Tangent point, that's what I was trying to think of. And then on the top of the bump, you want to put parallel lines. And then this curves down so that it's the back side of the ribbon, and actually, depending on if this is too fat, you want to have this curve up. So it looks like so the ribbon is kind of twisting in on itself. This is a little too fat. And so you can get that sort of thing too. It's too fat. So I'll include this on the Google Classroom. So if you want to try that in addition to your twisting ribbon. Now going back to the twisting ribbon. Wherever it is. So when you get, once you've created your ribbon, and I'll do this now with colored pencil. Let's say I wanted to make it a red ribbon. And I want to show that there's some shading. If the sunlight's coming from above, this is going to be lighter and this will be darker. And you probably want to erase your regular pencil so that you don't see it. And so it's just like a ghost image. So you erase it so it's barely visible before you start coloring. Now, as I move out from under that umbrella, I can lift up on the pencil pressure and get it lighter and lighter. And I like the way you sometimes just have it so light that it creates a shine. So this will be real light up here. Let's erase the pencil so it doesn't show. And you don't want to erase it completely. You just want to have it so that you can see it, but it's not real obvious. So we're going to have this real light up here and maybe even disappear. And then go back to being a little darker. So it catches the light in different ways as it goes around, but it may be underneath here. And if you want to blend a darker color like a blue with that and give it even more shadow, so you can see how that creates a nice shadow. So here's an example of that, a little bit bigger here for you to see. So there's that shadow part. It looks like it was blended a little bit more as it comes around. Now, if you want to continue with the color blending exercise, I attached a document on, and it looks like this, and it kind of tells you, it's using ribbons and in the same way we used the color blending exercise, which I can't find at the moment, but the same as this one. Only instead of just squares, you can do it on the ribbon. So it would, here's a different version of those instructions. So you actually are creating two intertwining ribbons, and you would have ribbon number 1 as a rainbow and go all around the color wheel. So you're starting with, let's say, yellow. And let's grab a color wheel here. So you could start with yellow, and very slowly you're moving to lime green, yellow green, and then so you're getting into the intermediate colors too. Yellow, yellow green, green, blue green, and so on, all the way around, and continue. So you go around the color wheel maybe a couple times. The second ribbon could have some blending exercises, have some twists. So on the first bend, it's going to have pressure change, so you're going from light to dark with pressure, light to dark with pressure. And then maybe on the second one, using white and black to create darks and lights. So you're blending white colored pencil and black. And then on the other bends, you can create browns or grays with complementary colors, similar to the way you did it on the other blending exercise, this one, where you mixed your complementary colors and created your browns. So that's another option too. So I'm kind of leaving it open as to how you want to use your ribbons or your whatever you are going to use. And then I also suggest a Pinterest page, a couple of Pinterest pages of ribbons that you can click on and go to that link. Okay, so then this final document is something that I think is a nice way to get that creativity component in there. So when you're ready to start, you might feel pretty confident in your craftsmanship as far as I think I'm pretty good at blending. I think I know how to make the ribbons twist. I'm good at overlapping and so on. But now I want to come up with something that's a little different than just an exercise. So you want to ask yourself these questions. First of all, you have this plain white piece of paper, and hopefully it's a nice one. You can do a half sheet like this, so it's not quite as big if you want, depending on what you're going to do. So first of all, what string-like thing is the subject? Like Omar's octopus, or is it just going to be ribbons? And what is the mood? So since I was teaching at a continuation high school, I had a lot of boys, and a lot of times they like to do dangerous, scary kind of thing, like skulls and swords and that kind of thing. But since most of us are not middle school or high school boys, you can do whatever you want. Do you want it to be whimsical? Do you want it to make a social commentary about how you feel politically, or about how the year went, or whatever? Do you want it to be scary, whimsical, beautiful, etc.? It could be cartoon-like. What are you going to add to make it your own original idea? What are you doing or adding? What's your focal point? What photo references do you need? Let's say you were going to do a photo of your dog with a big ribbon in its hair and ribbons wrapping around it in some delightful way. You would need a photo reference of your dog then. And should you use only colored pencil, or do you want to use mixed media? Is it going to be horizontal or vertical? You saw some of the kids had done a sideways one. Just because the tablet comes vertical, you might feel like what you're saying works better by doing a horizontal format. How are you going to solve the negative space? Is it just going to be left the white of the paper, or are you going to do something more in the negative space? And then how will you know when it's finished? Is it balanced? Think about your composition principle: balance, unity, focal point, negative space. What I like to do is every so often put it down on the ground and stand up and look at it. Or sometimes give it time, like lean it up against the wall, walk out of the room for a while, or even go to the next day. And when you walk back in the room, all of a sudden you might see what it still needs, that it's not quite finished yet. Or hold it up to a mirror and look at it in a mirror, or take a photo of it and look at it in the photo. A lot of times that will tell you what it needs. When you're just working on it close, right in front of you, sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees, so back up from it. And then finally, where and how will you put in your artist's signature? If you're working in colored pencil, the signature should be in colored pencil. Do you want to have your signature wrapping around the ribbon somehow? You don't want it to be the dominant thing, but you want it to be visible. One other thing I forgot to mention. Before you start on your drawing, it's a good idea to, and I'm not talking about these little practice pages, but on your final drawing, take a ruler and make a border around it. And that's going to be the framework where you create your image. Because you never know, you might find you want to frame this or mat it later on. And if that's the case and you've gone right to the edge of the page, the framer doesn't have anything to grab onto. So this way you've preserved the edge. See how this would have been cut off and kissing the edge of that ribbon. So create your border first before you start. It's a good idea to get into that practice. And then also with your artist signature, don't put it so close to the edge that the framer would have to cut it off, or even worse, cut it halfway off. At least if you cut it off, you can always re-sign it, but halfway just doesn't work. So, those are some things to consider. All right, enjoy, and I can't wait to see what creativity you come up with. Don't forget your blender, your colorless blender too, these guys. And don't forget that some of you might have the sticks that you can also use. Okay, have fun.